So toward that end, we've engaged Julian Bonder. He's the architect of a project that he's going to, I believe, tell you a little bit about in France, a similar project, probably larger in scope than this one, but similar in purpose. And he's going to be collaborating with Marianne Thompson, another architect with whom he's had a close working relationship over the years. And they're working with us on what we hope to develop at Liberty Square. So let me just briefly tell you about them before we get started. Julian he's a teacher, a designer, a registered architect born in New York and raised in Argentina. He's a professor of architecture at the Roger Williams University with a private practice based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I think there are some materials that have been distributed to you, so there's a lot more that you can read about him. And I think what I'll do in order to save time, just kind of leave it at that with Julian. And similarly with Marianne Thompson, she was educated at Princeton University, and like Julian, by the way, a graduate of the School of Design at Harvard University. And she received her master's in architecture there and in landscape architecture. She also has a private practice based in Massachusetts. So what we're going to do tonight is, before I turn this over to Julian and Marianne, so that they can offer you some introductory remarks, I'm going to, kind of direct you to the materials that I believe you've received. In those materials, there are some questions that have been developed by Marianne and Julian to get people to think about the project. To help us through this conversation. And to the extent I need to refer to them, I will refer to them. But Peter, I think the way we're going to do this tonight, because we had some success with this at our last session, is that the conversation went so well that it really didn't require a lot of moderation from me. So I hope that happens again tonight. And what we'll do is we'll periodically put, one of these questions up on the screen so you can look at it and react to it if you want. So we encourage you to, offer your comments directly, but if you want to use the chat, that's also we found that to be effective. The chat window, we found that to be effective last time as well. I think we're going to probably end around 7:30. I think we have this scheduled for 90 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it up here, turn it over to Julian and Marianne for whatever introductory remarks they would like to make. And before I do that, I would just like to, ask Julian and Marianne to include this in their comments, so that I don't have to actually ask you it after you finish, but including your comments, this whole idea, the value of this community input process, and getting acceptance and feedback from the community about what they'd like to see, what they wouldn't like to see, what concerns they may have. I know you've had that experience with a couple of projects that you've had. In particular, I'm thinking the one in France, and I believe you also may have referred to some of that experience in the Martin Luther King Memorial that you and Marianne worked on in Boston, where you were finalists there. So if you could just include those in your introductory remarks, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and comments. So Julian, Marianne, take it away.
Thank you. Can you hear me? So I want to thank everybody for taking the time for being here. Again, Ms. J, Clint, Peter, and I also want to recognize, our Dean, Steve White, who's been absolutely instrumental in all our work, as a Newport neighbor and friend, and is, been substantially helpful in all what we're trying to do together. Also, we have Mayor Bova and Scott Wheeler as well, and I would like to thank them for being here. And what I will do today is I'm going to go very quickly through some images of ideas, and just run with some ideas that hopefully will spark the conversation here. The idea is to hear your voices, not so much mine. So I'm going to go very, very quickly through some of this material. Some of you may have seen some of this, but I'd like to use this time sort of to refresh, some of this approaches to memory and what it means to work on public space and what it means perhaps to work in Newport. So let me share screen, if that's okay, and we'll get started. Please let me know if you do see the PowerPoint. Do you see the image?
Yes. We see it.
Yep.
Okay. So, partly, I'm going to go very, very quickly with the images. Okay. So the concept here is to ask ourselves what it means to work, on this particular site, and what it means to sort of think about memory in the context, of enslaved people and slave trade and the site, itself. So, oh, sorry. Okay. So this is an image of the project that we've done in France, which is a transformation of a public space that existed, the embankment of the port of the 18th, 19th, and 20th century, into the memorial to the abolition of slavery, which is a very significant public space in the city of Nantes. You can check the website. I'll show it to you in a second. But basically, that's partly what we do, is to investigate what can the site accomplish. And this particular site in France, included on the other side of the water, a building that is very significant. And this window that we open, looks at a building that is on the other side, which is the Palace of Justice. So partly all the work that we do is to establish dialogues with what exists, with what we can see, and try to unearth what is not visible, conversations. But all the work starts with questions. All the work that we do starts with questions. And I'd like to formulate these questions in this sort of, inviting James Baldwin to join us. And he asks, the questions that one asks oneself begin at least to illuminate the world and becomes one's key to the experience of others. All what we're trying to achieve here at some level, fundamentally, is an ethically motivated and driven project. That is to connect with the presence of others who do not have a voice and did not have a voice. Yet those others who are human beings, and we need to honor them, in this place. Partly, we also want to remind ourselves that the legacies of enslavement, are still present in our societies, perhaps in different forms, but we have to acknowledge that and to work through that. Because in a certain way, to remember is to act in the present, is about the present. To transform public spaces is always about the present, yet it connects to the past, a past that is sometimes hidden under the ground.